Hello, this is Dan Jolin, and I love everything to do with tabletop gaming. So here I am on board Chitlist.
Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Board Chitlist. I'm Lecky, and this week I'm joined by
Tristan,
Jackie,
Dave,
Sam.
Awesome. And last week we played Game of Thrones, the board game, 2nd edition from Fantasy Flight Games, and this week we played Middle-earth, the Wizards,
collectible
card game.
Not as collectible anymore.
No, you can't get it for love nor money.
It's dead.
Well, so why?
It came out 20 years ago in the mid-90s, and ICE, who made the game, lost the license, and it was never continued. And I recently came into a copy of many cards of the game and was determined to inflict it on all of you.
And let's see how we got on then. Shall we talk about that straight away? Now we've put out a little bit of information.
Do you want it, or do you want to do game?
Do you think we've aroused people's curiosity?
Arouse the denizens.
let's do it.
arouse them like those miners.
Let's get straight into it then. So it's a well-dead collectible card game that Tristan picked up, and it comes with about 15 different sets of homebrew rules, half a set of actual rules, a playmat which is kind of optional, but also necessary in order to play it without your brain leaking out of your ears. Have I summed it up correctly so far?
I like your summary a lot. It's so obviously back in the day it was a lot like Magic the Gathering in terms of its collectability and rarities and uncommons and rares and all that kind of stuff. So I came into a collection of this of a couple of thousand cards and have been piecing together the rules over the past couple of weeks to try and get my head around it. The game itself is discontinued, so the community that do continue playing it play a version called the Arda, which is the world of Middle-earth, where you just chuck all the cards in. The idea being, if 5 people like yourselves and me come to this game and don't have a clue how to build a perfect deck for it, what you do is pool all of the cards into giant stacks, which I've taken ages trying to sort of balance out and get like an even number of baddies and goodies and everything else. And you draw from them all at the same time, almost like a deck builder. So you're all playing with a shared hand and your own hand as well. I, for the life of me, couldn't find a video playthrough of someone playing this by the actual rules. So every single person that's done a video playthrough of the Middle-earth, the Wizards, has their own interpretation of the rules or their own solo versions and their own ways of how it plays. So basically what I did was cobble together the official rules and a bunch of variants and tried to make the best of it. And what we discovered is it takes a long time to play if you do that. I think it would take just as long anyway because there was 5 of us if we played it by the official regular rules, which is literally where you build a deck and have at it. I did actually prepare that option as well, but we didn't get the chance to play it because the Arda version ended up taking all evening. So you're playing as the Wizards, you're playing as the 5 Istari, Gandalf, Alatar,
Radagast,
Saruman, and
Palinor,
Peter.
Palpatine,
Senator Palpatine. And so you're going into Middle-earth and you're trying to sort of gather the free peoples and make them fight against corruption, against Sauron and stuff, and try and rewrite the history of Middle-earth so you don't always just have Gandalf win. So, this speaks to me enormously because it's, first of all, it's Middle-earth, the IP is amazing, the quantity of cards and the variety of interactions between the cards is insane. And we're lucky enough to have access to a huge pool of cards. But it was quite obvious that over the course of tonight's evening, describing the rules and how to play took ages, and then actually playing the game, we figured out we played 2 rounds, I think.
3.
Yeah.
Well,
Was it 3 or 2?
I think it was 2.
2.
Yeah, because I went to Forest Shell twice.
Yeah.
So it might have been better to introduce this as a one-on-one on a less busy evening. But anyway, that's a rough overview of what the game is. I did print out the playmat. I've especially bought a playmat that's got all the locations listed for ease of use, so it turns out it's more of a board game. And we were travelling around the map having adventures and stuff. Each turn you send your party of dudes out, Aragorn and all the old favourites and a load of people that are way more obscure from Lord of the Rings. And you go to a site like Moria and try and play a cool, great item like Narsil or the Sword of Gondolin, and then the person on your right clobbers you with a load of baddies from their deck. And each treasure that you win, or each faction that you win over, or each ally that you get gives you marshalling points, and the object of the game is to get the most marshalling points before the free council is called. So it's kind of a victory point race disguised as a collectible card game. Sick. Okay, thoughts?
Yeah. It did take a very long time, but I think it was mainly learning time, wasn't it? It's like a lot of explaining, trying to work out what to do. We were scratching our heads asking questions. The first turn took the longest because we were all doing it very slowly, bit by bit. And then the second turn, we went a bit quicker, but it was still quite long. But I think part of that is that, a bit like Magic, everyone's attacking the player to their right. So you'll know in your head for your turn that where you want to move and what you want to do when you get there. But then your opponent's sort of caught out by surprise and then has to work out if they've got the monsters to attack you and how they're going to do it. And then you've got to work out what items or spells or abilities or events you're going to use to kind of counteract those, which does slow the game down a little bit. But for a 20-year-old game that doesn't officially exist, that's been made from the remnants of an old game, I thought it was fun. It's very thematic.
It's hugely thematic. I think if you can get past the mechanics, maybe not for me to speak on this. Sam, what did you think?
I think the game seems pretty cool underneath the time constraints, and I think there was so much downtime. I think I was becoming a bit disengaged with what was going on. And by the time my turn came around, it's so reactive every turn. So you know what you want to do, but then you've got to react to everyone else's. And you have that situation where if you're attacking the person that turn, you draw up a load of cards, and then you've got to read through all those cards. So the person sat there waiting for you to decide what you're going to do. I think that slows it down a bit more. But I like the meat of the game. I like the whole having the two decks in one, sort of using the stuff from your hand. No one knows what you've got. You know, it's quite cool that you can play it that way. And you can sort of, if you can't play cards as well, pass it on to the next person. I think that's quite a cool little element. It went around the table a couple of times when we were playing. Yeah. But yeah, I think 5 players, it was just too big of a game, too much meat for us to actually be able to enjoy it properly. Took a bit away from me, but I'd like to come back to this just as a one-on-one, or one-on-one-on-one. I don't think beyond 3 players. I think that would be sort of the sweet spot, really.
Yeah, I think I'd say even maybe 2 players, just like Magic, 1 versus 1. And also, like you said, it is a deck building game. You should have really gone through and said, "Oh, I want this in my deck and this in my." What is the deck hand if you play on your like a proper game?
Dave. Say again? Sorry.
When you make your own decks?
What's the rules kind of thing?
Well, how many cards are you allowed in your deck?
I think so. It's like a minimum of. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's about 60. It ends up being, you've got half hazards, which is the stuff that you're going to blast on your opponent on their turn, and half resources, which is stuff you're going to play on yourself. A, to respond to events and stuff, and B, to try and score marshalling points. And then you have your characters as well, which are outside of that, and you build a party at the start of the game, and any characters you have left over get shuffled into your deck. And weirdly, you start out with 2 minor items as well that you can share out amongst your party. You have 1 leader in your party, 1 or 2 leaders in your party that have like higher influence and mind than the others, and they can sort of control the other dudes. And you have the wizard that you are, whether you're playing as Saruman or Gandalf or whoever. You can have a couple of copies of them shuffled into your deck as well, and you can bring them into play later, and they become more powerful and give you more characters. There's a lot to explain, but the overview is you're playing, you build your deck as you want it, and you're playing your characters. You're traveling around the world. You bring in your items, and you're getting hit by the other player. And I guess with 5 players, it does make it very complex, doesn't it? Yeah, because it is like you said, it's like a Magic the Gathering style game, which is basically just most of the time 1 versus 1, isn't it? You know, you take a turn, your opponent takes a turn. And also they added in the element of when having their turn, if you have more players, you go around the table saying, can you help out? Can you help out? You know, if I can't play any cards. And that also lengthened it because you end up going around the table again and you have to read all the cards because you're not familiar with them. This is a new game to us. But I did get a little taste of, you know, if you did make a deck, when Lecky went to a certain area
I had a card specifically was for a wilderness ruin.
Yeah.
Oh, the dragon.
That brought out a dragon, which wouldn't have been able to bring out at all because it was for a certain area. So I had a combo there in hand that made me also have an extra card that turn because it basically replaced it. And so I could see the potential, that it's like, oh, you could use that, you could combo it if it came up. So yeah, it's like a little mix of combos and things if you're lucky, but I don't think it happens quite often in this version because you have so many cards coming out all the time.
Yeah, it was super thematic because I literally just made a beeline north to pick up Glamdring, and you just completely cut me off with that dragon. It's fun. It nearly, it did kill. It killed somebody.
It killed Philly, or was it?
Yeah. It took out Enwa, my elf.
Yeah, elf, yeah.
Bless. But is this version of the game that we played then, is that based on official rules from back in the day that have been worked upon, or is it just been made up with the collectible card game components?
Oh no, it's still the same rules, but it's the way that you play it. So the difference is, if you play the regular collectible card game, you build your own deck before you start, and you bring it along, and then you just play against each other. With the Arda rules, you're all drawing from the same pool of cards. So you do the deck building as you go, kind of thing, and you all have the same chance of drawing a bad run of cards or a good run of cards, and I tried to sort of mix it all up so everyone's got an even chance. And I think it kind of worked because there was very few turns where someone moved somewhere and you couldn't play anything against them. And if that happened, as we said, you could pass it on to the next player and they have a chance at smacking them down as well. And I think it led to some interesting situations. I'd never seen a dragon played before, which is what Jackie was just talking about. We also had an abductor come out and kill one of Sam's main dudes. And we had people succumb to corruption, which is a nice sort of rule as well if you gather too many items. Although it wasn't even too many. I think it was Dave. Didn't you have someone fall to corruption right at the end of the game?
Just needed to roll a 3 or a 2 on 2 dice, and that happened. So I think it's not a game you're going to take seriously. It's not balanced at all. You're literally just going to sit around the table, throw the cards out, and just see what kind of stories develop, which is cool anyway. Like it's not going to be a competitive game. I feel like the one-on-one could be. If you're going to create a deck, there's like stuff that you can combo off, like Jackie was saying. You're going to build decks specifically for certain things. But the design's so old. I don't know. I don't think that'd be great. I think if I was going to play it again, which I would do, it would be the Arda version. But I think, going back to what Jackie said, it'd just be sort of a one-on-one. I think it's too long waiting for other people's turns. You're not engaged. There is that going around the table a little bit, but not really. Because
that's why I thought 3 might be okay, because then you get the follow-on. If you can't play something, there's at least one other person to back you up. And there's some cards that you can play on out of turn sequence as well. So allow those to be used if you had the 3 players.
But I mean, 2 turns in 3 hours. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
It wasn't wonderful.
Nobody got time for that.
Well, we did. We literally did.
But that just reflects on us, doesn't it, Sam?
I didn't say I was proud of it.
We didn't have time for it though. We had to call the council when everyone was on like 9 points instead of 18.
Or 25. Oh, if you're playing it as the big game.
A full game of 25.
I was misremembering from my youth playing Magic the Gathering with 5 players and like 100 life points each. But I think in those days when we were teenagers, we had the time to just sit and play it forever. And it's a completely different situation when you crowbar it into like a 3 or 4 hour game night.
And as well, can we just talk about the artwork for a minute? Because like, I'm no artist, so maybe I don't have a leg to stand on, but it is... I mean, it's not very good, is it? It's very 90s.
It reminds me of the Lord of the Rings animated movie.
Yes.
Do you remember? Yeah.
I feel like that's what they've gone for. I saw the Aragorn card before, and that's just right out of that cartoon. Like no, it's not for me. But I think this was like, because it was ICE, wasn't it? Yeah. It was ICE, and didn't they? Was it Decipher who did the one with the stills? What did ICE go on to do? Who knows? But they probably had better artwork, didn't it?
In fairness, you said the owl looks like it's from the 90s, but this game was from the 90s. I mean,
yeah, I'm not saying that it's anyone's fault. Obviously, they couldn't afford
to go into the future to get better art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a mixed bag. Some of the art is absolutely shocking, and some of it's really good.
I saw a really good one.
Yeah.
Actually.
And there's some of it looks like it came out of like the old school storybooks.
Like
So
that one's really good. Wizards, River Horses, beautiful. And then we look at Halfling Stealth, and it just looks like that.
Yeah, you have to remember
You
this
can't
is
see it. But
this is before the days of like digital art,
So
Photoshop and things like that. So you can't get the lighting,
the two other
how
people,
it's meant to look, and
yeah, the two other people in the world that own this game. You can now look up those two and see if your opinion matches. If it does, then please go into the Board Shitless Facebook group and let us know if you agree. Also, there was, again, like this in a 20-year-old game here, but there was a few bits where the flavor text and the artwork just didn't match each other at all. So Bjorn is described in the book as having like, dark hair, and they've used that for the flavor text. But then the artist has given him like a ginger beard.
the text in general's like 90s text. Like there's so much text on these cards. Like now these days you've got like graphical design and keywords. I mean, there's keywords in this, but they're all over the place. They've used a lot of shorthand stuff on these cards, and it's not particularly readable. I think you can see where game design used to be and where it is now.
Some of it literally wasn't real. There was that much text on there.
Yeah.
It's all longhand, so like abilities and influence and things are described on the card, like the amount of influence they've got. That's all kind of done in symbols. But then when you get to actual card effects, then it's literally just written out. Like if you're fighting an elf, if you have a certain amount of might or whatever, and you could have just added more symbols. But I suppose expectations might have been a bit lower, or it could be easier with games like Magic.
I suppose it didn't have anything to build from though, or not much to build from to learn that.
Yeah,
Like we've got now, we've learned that doesn't work. So
yeah,
we've got modern games use a lot more iconography because of that exact reason.
and you get about 500 words of card abilities, and then they'll cram in 200 words of flavor text right after it in the tiniest font you can imagine. So there's a lot to complain about, but at the same time, as a game experience, it was quite a lot of fun. I've not played War of the Ring or anything like that, so I don't know if I could get a comparable. I think it'd probably be more fun to play War of the Ring.
I've only played it sort of half a game with Tristan, and it was brilliant. I would play that anytime with anyone. But I've not played a full game, so it might be rubbish. I don't know.
So if anyone wants to come and play with Dave, get in contact at Board Shitless.
It is a great example though of a dead game being kept alive
kept dead
by the community. Yeah, but like there's a lot of effort. Like the person that created this neoprene playmat, or that created this map to be printed out. Tristan, did you have to go and get this printed professionally, or did you buy it?
Yeah, I paid for the playmat to be printed especially, but the geeks on like Board Game Geek and stuff, and the guys in the different communities that are still keeping it going have loads of reference sheets, and this is one option for the map. There's another one that somebody's done which has different symbols again, tells you what kind of items can be played at different locations and what monsters are at those locations and stuff. So there's tons of resources out there. There's almost too many, and because there's so many different ways to play it and so many different interpretations of it, you really have to kind of hone down like how you're going to do it. I almost feel like if I had the time, I would write a blog on how I learnt this game, how to play it, and the different versions available, because there are so many different options. But I do think the one that we played tonight, I know it was a struggle, it took ages and everything, but I think it's kind of like the best of what's out there. And I played it solo a couple of times. I played the original version solo, which is like two decks against each other. The two starter decks that came out where the guys at ICE said this is how to play it. So I played that through to play it officially kind of thing. And I definitely see that this has more fun and more variety, more accessibility. It really excites me, and I could be completely skew-whiff on this because, I've come into possession of it and I spent ages researching it, but it excites me to see how other Lord of the Rings games have developed from it, like the Living Card game, which has drawn so much from this. But I definitely see what Dave's saying about, like, some archaic mechanics in here, like rolling dice to resolve the checks on the cards.
Two layers of randomness, isn't it? Which is kind of in a competitive, I mean, this was designed as a tournament sort of game, wasn't it? Like Magic the Gathering, and that's 2 layers. You got your card drawer and then your dice. It's like tournaments, especially, have moved quite far away from that now, because you might as well just. It's quite arbitrary. It could be quite arbitrary.
RNG,
Yeah, which is fine when you're just sort of wondering about playing the Arda version, just seeing what sort of little bits come up, like Pippin just will not die. That's that's fine because it's a little story. But in a 1 versus 1, I can see how it could be quite frustrating.
Yeah, and then the main motivation behind you going out into the world is fetch and collect, isn't it? Yeah. Go to this location, get an item, potentially move it on somewhere else for a few more points. I'm really glad that we played it when it arrived at your house. I was like really intrigued to like look at it, like a load of the cards. Some of the cards have like full on sagas assigned to them, and it'd be great to like get involved, play a game when we do have more time to just get knee deep in it and see what else it kind of holds.
Yeah, I think Tristan touched on that briefly as explaining the game to us, where if you end up with the 1 ring, which is quite hard to get as it is, and then you go to Mordor and you survive and you drop the 1 ring in there, you win the game, basically. So there's little homages to the book in a little side quest.
There's a few things like that. And also, if you do bring your actual wizard into play and he dies, you instantly lose the game. And you can get like mega points from achieving missions like that, like reforging the shards of Narsil and stuff. There's loads of kind of thematic side quest things that can happen in the game that are really thematic and really evoke the game. But to get to that, especially if you were playing the original version, you'd have to build your deck around a 1 ring strategy. Yeah. You know, it would be like having a specific type of deck in Magic the Gathering. You would have to have wizard cards that allow you to test rings. You'd have to have ring cards that you can bring in. You'd have to obviously have the 1 ring card in your deck as well. With this, luckily, we have all that, and it is a possibility, but it's very unlikely that it would come up and that you would get that combo. But it is something you could potentially work towards. And there are cards you can play that increase the chances of you finding the 1 ring. So you'd have to sort of steadily work your way towards it. But certainly in the Arda version, I think it would be much more difficult to pull off for the sake of having more variety of encounters and monsters and things like that.
Well, me and Dave both saw the Farsight card, which allowed you to go through the item deck and take a item of your choice.
Be able to, yeah.
So it is possible through this, and that card came out twice in what?
We just didn't know how to use it, so we discarded it. Didn't know what we were looking for.
I think that's, it can be expected when you're playing we're like board game historians playing ELD board games in the way we think they should have been played. If we were right or wrong, we had a bit of fun doing it. If you know anyone that might have this hidden away in a cardboard box, or they said, I've got this Lord of the Rings game that, it's dead old, give it a go, see what you think, let us know. The chances of getting any comments on social media based on this game are likely to be low unless it's the person that sent you the game, Tristan.
Well, you might be right there. It might be zero interest to anybody, but I think it was a great thought experiment, like you say, in terms of the history of board games, where games have come from and how far they've come along and how this compares to Magic the Gathering. It also, for me, was great to be able to introduce it to you guys. I knew it was probably too ambitious for us all to just whip through a game in one evening. But I'd love to pick this up again on a 2-player or 3-player game at some point.
Agreed.
And it also poses the possibility that if this is playable, we should give Magic Realm a go at some point.
I don't want to comment to tie myself into another evening of 4 hours for 2 turns.
Yeah, you get 1 turn in Magic Realm.
Well, that was it. That was Middle-earth, the Wizards, the collectible card game. Last week we all went into a drafty cave and huddled around a map of Westeros and decided that we were going to throw down and fight out between us who was going to be the ruler of the 7 Kingdoms. Daz unfortunately didn't survive. He was with us last week, but then he couldn't make it this week. It's probably the heartbreak
Sorry,
of
Daz.
being attacked from all sides by all of us. The inevitable betrayal. Yeah. But we were playing
Snap.
we were playing FFG's Game of Thrones, the board game, 2nd edition, with expansions, but not including the expansions. They were available, but we chose not to play with them. And we had a great fun time. I won, which is the important thing. If you've not played it, it's an area control game. There's like slight Euro-esque abilities where you kind of decide by throwing down tokens what abilities you're going to use that turn. You get to use an ability per sort of region, and it's great fun. You get to sort of create allegiances. You're not allowed to trade any sort of resources, but you can promise to support people and then just completely renege on that and take over their cities. What did we think?
It was long.
It was very long. That's probably the biggest bugbear of the game historically, isn't it?
I think the first expansion, I think that was the first thing they did, was just decrease the time of the game.
Yeah.
I think it is a long game. I think we did all right, actually. I think I've heard people get it to like 6-7 hours.
Really? It felt a bit like Monopoly, like you sort of know who's going to win long before it happens, and if enough of you kind of get together and try and stop it, then it might happen. But it seemed like half the game was me and Tristan kind of like hovering around 5, 6, and 7 castles. So you need to take over 7 sort of strongholds in order to win the game, and we were just kind of like flitting in between them, and then occasionally like Sam would take over a castle and then have it taken away.
I didn't keep hold of them very well.
Dave had a bad experience though.
Let me tell you about my experience with Game of Thrones. Do you know what? It was a bad, like, I'm not going to lie. It was a pretty bad game. Tristan basically took Lannisport turn 2, beginning of turn 2.
Why did he take it?
It was my fault. I left it open. But what happened is, for the next 4 hours, I was sat there placing basically 1 order token per turn, and it was always the same order token, because what else could I do? So it was a bad time. But having said that, I still had quite a good time overall, I would say, watching everything else. Yeah. I knew I'd lost straight away, and I was just trying to stop Tristan, but there was no way I could build anything up. So I was kind of a thorn in his side, but I think it was kind of irrelevant in the end.
Yeah, I should mention Tristan was the Greyjoys.
Yeah, Tristan was Greyjoy, I was Lannister, and I just left the castle open, and he just came across the sea and took it, which was bad news. So yeah, but it was quite fun sort of watching everything else unfold. You could see Lecky sort of creeping down the eastern side of the map, and nobody was really...
I said from the very beginning, I said, look at Lecky. I said, look what Lecky's doing, look at all men he's got, and no one paid attention. Instead, it was Tristan and Dave bickering over that tiny corner of the map. I was in the other corner, I was Dawn, and Sam was the Tyrells, and Daz was the Baratheons.
Yeah. And I was the Starks.
And so I was just attacking Daz because he was right next to me. Sam was too busy being a pacifist. I say that in quotation marks. Moving towards King's Landing. So I came in behind him, even though I said I wouldn't, and started taking his castles. So it was a lot of fun. Just like we were like playing the game, basically. Me, Sam, and Daz, and Lecky. Tristan and Dave just had a bickering match in the corner.
Tristan was playing the game. Tristan was dealing with me. He was diverting some resources towards me, but he was still playing the game. That's how little effect I was having, because I had 1 army. I couldn't muster anymore. And basically, it was just me and Tristan going over Lannisport. He'd move in, I'd take it back. He'd move in again. But that would only cost him like 1 action per turn. The rest of it, he was off capturing castles and harassing Lecky a little bit.
I still hold Daz responsible for Lecky winning the game.
Well, it was probably the introduction of the hard border between the between the Starks and the Greyjoys. We had 1 turn of like full-on aggression between each other. It cost us both a lot, and we decided we'll just support our troops from this point and then move south.
It was the point where you said, "Okay, Daz, I won't attack you." And we're all like, "Well, you're building up all your forces right next to his doorstep." Dad was like, "Okay, yeah, just carry on." Ignored you completely, and then you just walked through his castles.
He was right. He was right to deny your Baratheon propaganda. And in my defence, I was like acting hand of the king unofficially, and I was just making sure that
you murdered him.
Safe. Only after you'd wiped out King's Landing.
I moved in there to protect him. King's Landing was exposed after you came marching down the east coast.
Yeah, but
God save the king.
Mudslinging aside, it was fun. There's a couple of options. So you can march to move troops around. You can sort of consolidate power. You can
raid,
which will just cancel someone else's march, order, or raid?
Not the march, the consolidate.
Okay, the consolidate, sorry. And then you can muster. So if you've got a certain amount of influence on an influence track, here's special tokens that you can use, which will just give you an extra ability. So instead of consolidating, you can muster, and you can do various other things, which is quite nice, which meant that you always had sort of skin in the game when it came to bidding for places on victory tracks, which just mixed it up a little bit.
And the cards for the fights were quite cool as well. They changed the
Yes.
fights every single time.
One of my friends was talking to him about this, and he said he doesn't like it because it's too deterministic. You can kind of guess who's going to win a combat, which on the one hand I kind of agree with, but on the other hand, like it does put strategy in there. Like, do you tank a combat and save a higher power card? I think it would come more into it if you knew all the sort of abilities of the cards of your opponents, because each house has got completely different, in some cases, cards. And there's also, if it is a problem, there's a little deck of cards that mixes the combat up, makes it slightly more random, causes more death.
Yeah, I think knowing that everybody's cards will help, because when you play the card, you have to put it down for everyone to see, so everyone knows which card you played and what power it was. So then you can sort of say, well, I know he's still got, a certain character in there that is quite powerful that can do this, so I sort of want to counteract against that. So if knowing the game a bit better than we did probably would have made it a lot more strategic, but we were just it was our first go, so we were just sort of threw ourselves into it and tried to be as close to our characters as our countries, I guess, as we were. We weren't very good at it. Basically,
we did have to keep an eye on each other in terms of like accidental cheating. So there's a resource mechanic, whereas you're allowed a certain amount of units bunched together in one area of the map. If you've not got many resources to supply your army, so it's the supply mechanic, then you're allowed like 3 tokens in one area, 2 in another, and then pretty much 1 in the other places. As that builds up, you can get bigger armies in more places. But if you drop down on that scale due to a turn, it wasn't always obvious that you'd missed it, or you might have 2 ships in a sea zone and then another one in port, but then you'd move it out of port, and then all of a sudden you've got an army of 3 where it's technically illegal. And it was quite easy to kind of do these actions, or like add an extra footman with 2 knights and knock them over the top. And then as long as someone was kind of like just keeping an eye on saying, oh, actually, can you do that? And it's like, oh yeah, no, moving back. It could kind of spoil the game if you've got too many resources hanging around where they shouldn't be, because obviously it's a bigger threat than you're actually allowed to have.
Yeah.
So it was just, I found that during gameplay, you just had to kind of just keep on top of it.
That was one thing I liked, was the limitations on the armies, because I think I kind of have to draw a bit of a comparison with Risk, where if you play Risk or have played Risk, you can just get someone who will just shove 50 units in one area and then just march through everything. Whereas this, because you're limited by your supply on the size of your armies, you could never have anything bigger than, I think 4 was the biggest you could have.
Yeah, if you got all the way up
4
the track.
units, and that
Could be 4 siege engines.
it could be 4 siege engines. So they're like leveled up men, but it would always limit. So you'd never become too OP'd in any fight. There was always a chance you could survive it. It didn't get like ridiculous at any point, and I think it was quite good that supply, the idea of the supply to say this is all you can afford to have at any time. I quite like that.
But then you could just be quite clever with your support tokens. So if you have units adjacent to other units, geographical on the map, they could support, so they add their power to the units that are aggressing.
Yeah, you could also be tactical and cut off another person's supply as well. You could just take one of their places, and then that was it. They were stranded then in the middle and couldn't really get any more men.
The map movement was quite fluid, so territories were being like overrun and retaken quite often. In a combat, when you're defeated, they usually retreat unless a special ability is used, in which case a couple of soldiers will die, in which case they go back into your pool and then you have to like muster them again. So like the general game state seemed very fluid, and so did the amount of resources available. Who was sort of like appeared to be on top did keep shifting. It was like I was in the lead, or Tristan was in the lead at one point. I think Sam might have just like crept in there.
I doubt it.
I think you had at one point like most of the southern part of the map was green, and it was like a very sort of like conga line,
Planting
like,
flowers and making daisy chains.
or whatever. Luckily, I kept her in check. Is there any sort of like grumbles about the game or gripes?
I was just going to say, I think we talked before about older games and how they hold up and stuff. I always have a lot of fun with this. But we've played it twice now, I think, and I remember really enjoying it last time as the Starks. And even though I didn't win, I made like it felt like I was making good headway. And it was, I think the Starks, maybe you were Starks, Lecky, yeah. So you're up in the north, you're kind of untouched. It takes a while to sort of worm your way down into the rest of the conflict, especially when there's like 6 players. So there was a lot happening from the outset further south. Certainly me and Dave obviously went to war straight away, and that was it for the rest of the game. We were locked in, completely tied up with each other's resources. But down in the south, you 3 guys were all having, Sam, Jackie and Daz were all having their own wars as well. And it always feels good. It always feels like you're making progress. It always feels like you're completely hard done by, whatever your situation is. And it does have the effect of the less you have and the worse you do, and the less you have. So, for example, with Dave and me battling from the outset, it wasn't a completely decided thing straight away. There was a lot of back and forth before your guys started dwindling, and then by the end of the game, I think you had 3 dudes in one region, sort of thing. So it was, even though other people were sort of expanding outwards, as you were losing stuff, you were losing more stuff, and I could feel your frustration. Even though I was like, yeah, I'm taking out your territory, I could feel like, actually, the way that modern games work now, we've been playing Tyranny of the Underdark, and that has this cool thing where even if you're losing territory, you can be building your deck, or you can be gaining VPs from killing other guys, and you're always in the game right till the end. Whereas with Game of Thrones, I think, if you start falling behind, you're going to keep falling behind, and you have to really pull a blinder to pull it back. And I don't know how I feel about that. I've personally really enjoyed it, even though I knew I wasn't going to win because I was kind of hemmed in on all sides. Just making progress and building the empire and seeing the sort of Greyjoys grow still felt like fun, and it still felt like I was doing fun stuff. And for every sort of instance where I felt like, I don't have any influence, I don't have the Iron Throne, or I don't have, some cool thing that everybody else has done. I think, is it something like 3 out of 4 of the kingdoms can muster when other people can't. Not having that felt huge, because it was like, wow, every turn these guys are getting new dudes coming in, and then they're also deciding that nobody else gets any reinforcements, and that felt like a huge thing to overcome. But I think part of the fun of the game is trying to overcome those challenges and use what you've got to make something happen. So, for example, I was like, I'll be really strong with the sea, because the Greyjoys are all about the sea at the start, and then neglected that later on in the game, which is what Lecky used to completely kneecap me and stop me from making any headway at the end by attacking the ports and stuff. And I think everybody else had that sort of same, they had a cool thing to build on, and if you didn't capitalize on that, everybody else would screw you over ASAP kind of thing.
Yeah.
So some data mechanics in there, but I think overall a lot of strategy, a lot of fun, and a lot of interesting decisions to be made in laying down your tokens, where you're going to move, what actions you're going to take. I've really got a lot of time for this game, and I'd play it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, there's also the wildlings section of the game where there's 3 cards are drawn, and it decides whether the wildlings sort of attack. So you needed power, share the power, basically. Your power, like pool, which is what you get if you have certain territories. You can gain power every round. You had to share it out and sort of bid to say, oh, the wildlings, if they do attack, there's a card there. One of you could read it if you had the Raven, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So you could say, oh, this card's really bad, or you could lie, sort of say it's all right. And then you have to bid in power to see if the wildlings attacked, and if they did, it could be really bad depending on this card. And again, with the Iron Throne, if you had the Iron Throne, you could really screw people over. If you're playing a house that is not doing so well at the time, don't be disheartened, because there is stuff you can still do. Like, your character cards can really mess up someone's turn and things. So don't be thinking, oh, I'm not doing so well, I might as well just do whatever. Just keep on.
Unless you're Lannister and you've lost Lannisport, because it was literally nothing.
You didn't lose it, you gave it up.
That's technically true, yeah. And I would say there's people out there that wouldn't like this game. There is things that you can do that can really sort of ruin someone's day.
Can you tell?
So yeah, but I think I still enjoyed it though. Like I would like I'm like Tristan. I would play it again like whenever. But I think there are people out there that would just be
one of the things that I liked, which I think was part of the problem with where you two bickering from the start, was the intensity of the number of castles or strongholds right in the center of the map. So there was a lot right there, whereas Jackie's Dawn and me as Tyrell's down at the bottom. There was a few spread out really far, so we had to travel a long way, sort of spreading thin our resources to get to these castles.
What, you're getting stuff as you're moving?
Oh no, but I realised I spent a lot of resources getting like supplies, so I could have all these big armies, but I didn't have any units to put down, so it was redundant. Whereas I had to get to that middle point, so I had to join the fight even later on to be able to start getting more castles to have a chance. So we were scrapping at the bottom over the ruins, basically. Whilst you were I think there was about 6 castles right in the middle, as well as your home one. That'd be all 7 if you could just get that centerpiece. So that's where the fighting's always going to take place. I think because you started there, you're right in the middle of it from the start. We're more got time to just slowly, gradually start doing stuff, but we're behind by the time we get there.
It's just poor logistics, really, from the armies down south. Speaking from the Stark's point of view, you've got the whole run of the north of the map, but there's only 2 strongholds there.
Well, yeah,
so you have to come south.
Again, like you won, but it took you a long time before you started fighting.
It took forever, but I was constantly mustering to try and build up forces.
Vale, didn't you? The Vale was Lecky-land, wasn't it? Nobody opposed that because we were all too busy. Me and Tristan were too busy fighting each other. Oh. And Dawn was attacking Baratheon slightly and then backing off. It was a bit weird over there. I don't know what was going on.
Because Lecky was coming down from the north and he was whispering in Daz's ear, going, "Oh, it's all right, Daz. I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to attack Tristan." And Daz believed him while I was attacking Daz. And then his forces started dwindling as Lecky was like decided to turn coat. You know,
it's very one-sided point of view there.
Daz isn't even here to defend himself.
Yeah, I mean, his forces were dwindling because you were destroying them from the south.
I didn't do a very good job because then I said to Daz, "Oh, well, I'll help you out, Daz." And so then I started helping Daz. Or trying
me.
Yeah, so I started taking Sam's land instead because I saw a bit more of an opportunity down there than I did up in the north, and Sam was moving across towards King's Landing. So I turned coat there as well. I was like, "Oh, Sam, I'll just take your castle." So you can have a lot of fun with that.
You really can.
I was the only honest one in that whole game. I kept to my promises until I got stabbed in the back. I won't attack you, Dave. I'll give you all that space. I gave you the space. Jackie, I won't attack you until you started attacking me. I know.
I'm sure if I had
but I was honest.
It is cool, actually, how even though you're not directly in conflict with everybody, because logistically you can't be, fighting 5 wars at once, but other people can have a massive impact on your game from miles away.
So if Lecky's approaching from the top and he's got like the Greyjoys and the Baratheons and the Lannisters all in the middle, we can be chipping away at the others so it diverts your forces all the time. Yeah. So that actually affects what Lecky's doing because we're drawing his forces away, which opens stuff up at the end. So it's like, do we hold off so they can reinforce that? And so it all does affect each other.
I think the boats are huge.
Boats is what won it.
Boatsies.
Yeah, well, it's an area control game, but when you look at the board, it's not like hexes, and then whoever's got the most hexes wins, or whoever's got like a load of hexes and the big hex in the middle. It's really unevenly distributed. There's small chunks with like loads of castles. There's big wide swathes where there's like nothing. And then there's these little like sort of, bottlenecks of water all around, and there's bottlenecks on channel islands and rivers blocking people. And there's very key strategic points. One of them was that where the land joins from the north to the south across that river. I can't remember what they are on the board. I've not got it to hand. But it's like a key point, and Tristan just occupied it the whole time. And the second half of the game was us just fighting over it, and in the end he had to build a ship and go around it in order to circumvent it. Daz had all his ships between King's Landing and the Baratheon homeland, and then the surrounding waters. So that kind of just stopped me from getting through. And I think, not wanting to speak for him, but I think if he'd moved ships south to try and deal with Jackie a bit more easily when she was attacking him, that would have opened it up for me. So I could see why he didn't really move them. But it also
he was also using them as supplies. So every time we were attacking him, he was using those ships as supports. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that as well, but he was using them as supports in every fight, so they were throwing in extra.
It's brilliant.
I think you could
points
play
every
it
time.
like 6 different times, once as each faction, or 8 different times with the expansions, and have 8 completely different problems.
Oh, definitely.
Like, I think you could play the same faction twice and have completely different experiences, just depending on who's on either side here.
And how you choose to play.
But looking at the board, like, that's not, when I first saw it, that's not the impression that I got. Like, but having played it, I think that's probably true. I think the replayability is definitely there, even before you add in like the expansion objectives that change everything up. And I think Fantasy Flight brought a new expansion out only a year ago. It's quite a modern expansion. It adds like the Targaryens and I think the Arryns as well, but they're already in it from a previous expansion. But it adds like Essos. It has like Essos goes next to Westeros. Crazy.
I'd really like to play it again, especially as a different faction. Like, I'd love to like play as Dawn, just to see how the puzzle changes and how you would break out from down south and how you would manage the people around you. Because that's one thing that Stacks didn't really do in our game, was negotiate, because there was a standoff with Tristan, but that's all it really was. And yes, I was promising Daz I wouldn't attack him, but we all knew the piece wasn't going to
We all
last.
except for Daz.
Yeah.
Daz hasn't played this sort of game with you before, has he? So probably wasn't.
He doesn't know about evil lacking.
Again, not wanting to speak for his better nature, but I think he literally, he thought maybe that if he attacks me, that's it. He's fighting a war on like 4 sides then. He'd rather keep it on 3 sides and see what happens. And Sam had done most of the damage before I could actually get to King's
Don't
Landing
go
anyway.
blaming me for that.
I'm not blaming you, I'm just saying.
Problem
But it's-
is, King's Landing is a big, massive target because it has 2 castles.
No,
Is it 2?
It's got 2. If you consolidate power there,
That's
it
it.
gives you more power. It's got
That's
2
it.
crowns.
So it's a big
but-
powerhouse, basically. So everybody wants to go for King's Landing.
It's thematically where you want to be taken, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's King's Landing, yeah. And so I was right next to it, and it was the first place I went for, basically, as Dawn. So it tied me up a little bit, and it was a bit too much for me to take on, but, I thought, well, why not?
Yeah, it's nice mechanic with siege engines. So footmen are worth like 1 unit, knights are worth 2 units, but then if you've got a siege engine, it's worth 4, but only for attacking cities. So once you've taken that city, then it's a glass cannon. It's not going to defend at all. It's only worth 1 unit. So then you have to bring in units from where else around the map, or work out another way to consolidate your power. So it's like, you just say cities would fall and then we'd be taken over straight away, but taken over again. And it was just constantly shifting. I really enjoyed it. And there was like so much, like you can tell from the podcast tonight, just so many lies being thrown around from Sam and Jackie.
Yeah.
Me and this Daz about me.
I've heard this game is a friendship breaker.
The very first time I heard about this game was one of my friends that I used to play with. And he said he went round to his friend's house, played this, got knocked out of the game within 30 minutes and was just sat on the couch for 6 hours while they all finished. He said he's never playing another board game again.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was Lannister.
Did
Especially.
you win as Lannister in the first game we played?
Yeah, but that was the expansion, Feast for Crows, and I think they're in a much stronger start. I think somebody said Lannister's a bit hemmed in there, and the expansion changed it and gave them a bit more of an advantage.
I can see why. I mean, as an area control game, it is good fun, but the real fun comes out in the relationship between you and your mates, and you just shouting at each other and making false promises. And there's so many games now that since this game was released have distilled that down. So you've got things like Secret Hitler, Resistance Avalon, games where the whole point of the playing is you just shouting as loud as you can, or coming out with as many different white lies as possible to try and convince people that you are or aren't. I'd love to play some expansion content as well. Now that we've got most of the base game rules down, it'll be good to see what different, because it does throw out different scenarios, like people start with King's Landing or other stuff.
Some of the objectives are like, you've got to take the Vale. So rather than just take 7 castles wherever you like, it might be like, go and take the Vale or take the North or whatever.
Lots of betrayal and shouting and just generally being upset at the situation you're in, or the people that put you in that situation, or the people that stopped you from winning, and 90 minutes has passed and now you're going to go to drive home, get shouted at for being so late. Oh, it's brilliant. Let's crack it out now, but play the short version.
I think a Saturday next time.
Yeah. It's a hefty game. It's one of the games where you read the side of the box that says, it can be played within 4 hours, and you say, no, this is going to take 2 days, and I'm going to love it because of it. Just clear your schedule.
6 players. You could probably knock out a 4-player game in 4 hours. Although we did it in 4.5 hours. Wasn't too bad, was it? What was it, like midnight?
Yeah. It
The
was
next day.
Sam didn't show up till 8 o'clock.
That's a very good point.
Physically, I was here.
Yeah, it. Yeah, I suppose it didn't take too long when you look at it that way.
Just felt like it did.
It did. It outstayed its welcome,
Yeah.
very much so. It was like we felt like at some point it got to some sort of conclusion, just like this podcast.
Like this podcast.
And we just wouldn't let it die.
It just needed a catch-up mechanic. That's what it needed.
Well, there we go. We'll be back next week with more discussion about more games. If we play, hopefully we'll play something that's a bit more recent and quicker to play. We've had two long games, haven't we? 2 weeks of 2 long games. So we'll try and speed it up a bit with maybe some like a Munchkin IP or Love Letter. Yeah.
Some tiny epic games.
I'll bring some sweet party games, don't worry. Pass the pigs. Just a warning for any Gloom of Kilforth fans out there. Latest game in the franchise, Shadows of Kilforth, will be going live on Kickstarter in March. Is that correct, Tristan? Hopefully.
Yeah, nice plug, Lecky. Yes, we're launching in March. So it's February tomorrow. So we're gonna now from now 20 minutes into February. So we'll be running an ad campaign on BGG throughout February to drum up some interest. We've already taken pre-orders for Shadows of Kilforth. Pretty much all the art's done, the design's 99% done, and it's ready to go. So dead excited about launching that.
Fantastic. So cancel that expensive birthday gift or anniversary present. You know what you're buying instead. And also, if all the kind listeners could make their way to iTunes and leave us a review or a comment on SoundCloud, that'll be absolutely lovely. We'll see you soon. Thanks very much and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.